Biohazard 2.
Ever since the release of the fantastic remake for the first Resident Evil in 2002, fans have asked for Resident Evil 2 to receive the same treatment. Finally, in 2015, Capcom released a video announcing that they were remaking Resident Evil 2, and then nothing was heard about the project for a while. Years passed, major gaming events came and went, and no news on the RE2 remake. Fans were starting to fear that the project was quietly cancelled. But in 2018, at E3, Capcom surprised us and released 2 trailers that gave us a release date of January 2019. Hello everybody, my name is Adolfo. Join me as I take a look at the Resident Evil 2 remake. Before we go any further, let me express that Resident Evil 2 on the PS1 is one of my favorite games from my childhood, and perhaps one of my favorite games of all time. So when Capcom announced that they were going to make a remake, my expectations were set extremely high. But I'm glad to say that my return to Raccoon City was an enjoyable one. The story of RE2 Remake pretty much hits all the same beats as the original, though there are slight alterations here and there to certain parts and to characters to differentiate it from the original. We still follow the structure from the 1998 original, meeting familiar characters, visiting familiar locations, and fighting familiar enemies. But the alterations they made have spiced things up for veterans of the series while making a great experience that newcomers can also dive into. During my first playthrough, I chose to play as Leon S. Kennedy on his way to Raccoon City for his first day as a police officer. Along the way, he stops at a convenience store to refill on gas. Sensing that something isn't right, he goes in to investigate and finds himself in the middle of a situation involving 2 officers and a deranged man who turns out to be a zombie. You take him out, and after finding a key, you run back out to the convenience store to find the store has been overrun with the dead and bump into the other playable character, Claire Redfield. Together they decide to seek shelter at the police department, and off we go back to 1998 to relive the horror and hopefully survive the city infested with the dead. The intro of the game is the perfect way to introduce you to the characters and the situation for those who have never played the original game, and it's a nice welcome back to those who have. It does a great job of setting up for the events that are about to transpire and immediately hooks you along for the ride. The first thing you'll notice while playing this game is its amazing presentation. Resident Evil 2 runs on the RE engine, which was the same engine that Resident Evil 7 and most recently Devil May Cry 5 used to render its photorealistic characters and environments. I'm glad they went with this because every little detail on the enemies is rendered beautifully, and the gore in this game is the most realistic and disgusting looking in series history. The character and enemy models all look great and have fantastic facial animation thanks to the use of motion capture technology. You can really tell that a lot of time and effort was put into crafting and animating these models, and it paid off. Especially the zombies. They made sure to capture every detail in the design of these enemies that you'll see the most of. They show damage where you shoot them, and you can even shoot off their limbs to immobilize them. It's little details like this that add to the overall experience. As for the cast of characters, I'm happy to say that everyone looks great. But to be frank, I didn't like Leon and Claire's redesign when I first saw them. I thought they looked a little too baby-faced. But that was just my initial reaction of me seeing them rendered in a new engine. There's actually a few designs I now prefer over the originals, like Ada's and Chief Irons, who they managed to make look even creepier. Overall, the game looks incredible, easily the best looking in the series, and it runs smoothly with the exception of a few graphical hiccups here and there. The gameplay for this version of Resident Evil 2 has been altered to resemble the more modern Resident Evil titles. The developers decided to go with an over-the-shoulder 3D camera instead of the traditional fixed camera angles that was present in the original RE2. In my opinion, this was a good decision. Though I would have loved the fixed camera angles, this also works very well. It feels completely natural and easy to get a hang of. They also give you a good selection of control types. I found that control type B worked best for me because it reminded me a bit of Resident Evil 4 and 5's button layouts. It's just a matter of preference. All of the layouts feel good. If you enjoyed the previous third-person Resident Evil games, you'll feel right at home with this game's controls. A lot of elements have also been kept to give off a sense of familiarity to accompany all of these radical changes. All of the memorable locations are here, from the RPD all the way to the Umbrella Lab, now named Nest, as well as a new area in the orphanage available during Sherry's gameplay section. Many recognizable items and puzzles make their return, but have been given a slight twist. Some were completely reworked, as well as adding some new ones, like the fuse box puzzles and the block puzzles in the orphanage. It's enough to give you a sense that you've seen these puzzles before, but changed enough to know that you're not experiencing experiencing the exact same thing, which is what a remake needs in order to stand out from the original. Speaking of familiar elements that were altered, let's talk about the RPD. Walking through it gives you a great feeling of nostalgia. There are some rooms that have been altered, but it still has a very familiar feeling. To me, it's like coming back home. I'm happy to say that most of the iconic enemies from Resident Evil 2 have returned, but there are a few notable absences like the crows and the spiders. Every enemy is dangerous in this game, from the zombies to lickers to Mr. X. Speaking of Mr. X, he has been reworked to be more of a constant stalker than just appearing in certain areas. When he appeared, my anxiety would spike through the roof, which was helped by the fantastic sound design. Mr. X's theme helps add to his threatening aura. When that bass hits, it sends you into a panic. When he isn't up in your face, you can hear Mr. X's footsteps echoing throughout the RPD, which puts you on edge. You can't help but be on the lookout, hoping he's not right around the corner. The developers accomplished what they set out to do with this decision.
Why won't he just stay down?
Overall, Capcom did a good job. They really took their time to make the monsters you'll be shooting and avoiding look fantastic.
You gotta see her eyes, her nose, her whole face. It looked like it was rotting. Yeah. She looked like a corpse. Like a walking corpse, man.
Sounds like my wife.
Now, I know I've been singing this game's praises for the most part, but the truth is that it isn't perfect. It has issues ranging from small texture glitches to big inconveniences that break the immersion. Mostly everything in the game looks fantastic, but every now and then you'll come across some weird looking textures that stand out quite a bit. The game has randomized damage to the enemies, which is really not entirely a bad thing. This can lead to some tense situations where you never know if an enemy is truly dead. But after a while, it becomes an annoyance when a zombie you've put down multiple times gets back up again. Like I mentioned before, some of the classic enemies were cut, most notably the crows and the spiders. To me, this wasn't a really big deal because there were mostly enemies that were relegated to certain areas, but I will admit, it does feel like the game lost a bit of enemy variety without them. Now, this is more of a nitpick, but I felt like it's worth mentioning. I feel like the soundtrack is a bit tame this time around. Luckily for us, you can switch to the original soundtrack if you bought the deluxe edition. It's also available as standalone DLC, along with a few costumes and guns. Though I feel like these items would have worked better as in-game unlockables, I'm happy that they were included at all. Moving on, let's talk about the later areas in the game. Capcom did a really good job of adapting every location from the original game. This can be seen more in the RPD more than the later areas. Like in the original, the sewers and the underground lab are very short. It's a small complaint, but it still needs to be addressed. The A and B scenarios in the old games felt entirely different, so you really feel like you were getting two parts of a story. These different scenarios ended up feeling more like arranged modes you unlock for beating the game, rather than a different point of view from another character. This is further emphasized when you factor in the missing zapping system from the original. The zapping system in the original game meant that there were some items that you could take that would affect your playthrough in the other character's B scenario, so you would have to make a decision whether or not to take the item or leave it for your next playthrough. I feel the game would have had higher replay value if they had gone with the unique B scenarios and including the zapping systems. Now, I know I spent a good chunk of this video complaining about things that this game did wrong, but in the end, it doesn't really get in the way of my enjoyment of the game. I've beaten this game around 6 times since I got it, and I still had a blast playing it again recording footage for this video. I can wholeheartedly recommend this game, even if you're not a Resident Evil fan, and it's a really good way to experience the story of Resident Evil 2. Thank you for joining me, guys. I hope you liked the video. I'll see y'all next time. Hey guys, thank you for sticking to the end of the video. I'd like to take this time to say that we have a Patreon. If you would like to become a supporter, please check out our Patreon, and you can give us as little as $1, and we'll give you a shout out at the end of these videos. We should have another video coming out within a week or so please look forward to that, as it is a very big video for Lenny. So that's it. Like, comment, subscribe, and please keep a lookout for the next video.